Napa know-how.
The Napa guy knows not to judge a man by his car's multicolored paint job or absence of modern gadgetry. Who cares if it's technically old enough to vote and the windows are powered by the strength of your left arm? Your monthly payment is zero, and it'll stay that way. Because with over 500,000 parts and a little Napa know-how, you can keep anything on the road. She may not be pretty, but she's all yours. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and you have reached Venus Unplugged. And what we do here is it's all about Venus. The archetype of Venus, the essence of who she is, the beauty and the horror, and the hurt and the joy, all that happens. And, today I want to talk about listening. Of course, the world has been shocked by the suicide of Robin Williams. And I find that, well, of course, devastating on one level, but profound on another. One of the things I find so profound is it is very clear with everything that is going all around the Facebooks and all this type of stuff, is that, at the heart of our society, we are death phobic. There's very little room for death in our world. It comes as a shock, it comes as a mystery, rather than what it is. It's, besides being an inevitable, it takes us to another place, another unknown place, some great mystery. So as I listen to all of this, I wonder, I don't have an answer, I'm just pondering, wondering, if that was the greatest part of Robin Williams' incarnation, was to move into his death in this particular way. If he had cancer, people could understand. Well, he was in the last stages of cancer, and after all, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he was suffering a mental illness, a depression, we don't really know. Although many of us do really know that place where this planet, this life, holds no beauty. And in ancient times, it would be considered loss of soul, loss of connection to psyche, or eros, or the beauty that is there. So we're all being called up to listen, partly to listen to, what do we feel about death? What do we know about death? Where are we just cranking out other people's opinions about what it is and what it isn't? How will we, we're all going to encounter it, so it's the great ha-ha moment, right? So what is that about? And one spends, whether they realize it or not, their whole life preparing. So I just wonder, perhaps, just perhaps, this was his final gift, to have people wake up, to not assume someone is happy, because they joke. There was this brutal, but absolutely true article on a website called, I think it was cracked.com, either cracked or crushed.com, and he talks about, comedians and how they suffer. That one, when one becomes so funny, it's to cover up the sorrow. If you're in a vulnerable mood, do not read this article because it will just push you over the edge. I mean, I just wept, and I can usually hold a tremendous space for suffering. My own suffering has taught me that, how to hold that space and listen. What's really going on? Not what the person is saying, but what is really being said. Because people get so frustrated. It's like, well, they didn't say anything. Well, actually, they did. But they said it in a language we couldn't hear. So last week, we began, a series on knowing. And today, I just wanted to talk about, what happens at these different levels of knowing or different levels of meeting, and that there's a difference between the feminine, unfocused, there's a diffused, and this is both the feminine in male and female, that capacity for diffused. We listen with almost to the rippling of the waters. We're not distracting. We're listening on another level. And the masculine is usually a very focused mind. Got their eye on the ball, and we're going to do it. We're not going to listen to shit, okay? So these are these two types of listening, and very often as we get older, which that happens to all of us, when we were children, we could hear that listening. We could know. Very artists and creative people do not give up that capacity to listen to an unfocused force. It doesn't have to make any sense. It's telling you something. So you'll put those little squiggles on some paint and something will happen. But the difficulty in our modern world is that we're taught, you've got to be focused. You've got to keep your eye on the ball. You have to have a purpose, whatever. And that's good. That's cool. Okay, we accomplish, we do. But sometimes it is at the cost of that feminine, unfocused listening and communication. And then we have absolute chaos. I think that happens so often when, when we say, he doesn't listen. She doesn't realize that he's in a focus. It's like, give me the task, tell me what the problem is, tell me how I can fix it, and I'm on it. And she's feeling, this focused. It's as if, it's perhaps, she's in this almost like poetic realm of associations. So if someone has a very focused way of listening, and, give me the facts, ma'am, okay, or what does this have to do with anything? And the other person is got an unfocused, there's war in heaven. They're never going to meet. And that's a tragedy. Because we don't want to lose our skill to shift into these different levels. And there are times when we know, okay, that we can feel like beside ourselves, just not with it today. And I think today is actually a perfect day because a lot of people are not with it. We're all either on a focus of why would somebody kill themselves? The why doesn't matter. I personally do not care what rock Buddha found his enlightenment. That's never been of my concern. It's the enlightenment that I find so interesting. So there are people who are very factual, and a lot of those questionings, if you listen, they're defenses against the person's death phobia. That's what you're hearing. And they want to know why, because if they know why, they can stop it. It will never happen to them. Well, psyche is a whole lot bigger than all of us, all right? And so this capacity for communication, the still small voice, I don't know if this has happened to you. Sometimes I can feel it happening. That we can actually hear ourselves saying things we know we do not mean, or things we've made up our minds about not to mention, or, that's kind of, I call it a Jungian truth. You have a word slip, and it's like, whoops, nope, that's exactly what I meant. And I've learned to just go like, my shadow spoke. I'm sorry. That's how it feels. I personally would like to leave the room right now, but I can't because shadow knows. Okay. And we sometimes are horrified at this knowledge, and that our tongue and our lips, which are being used, say something we never even knew we thought we could keep it a secret. So when we're mixing levels, which is what this is called, okay, it can cause such diabolical confusion. It's like, what are you talking about? And it's words. It's like cats and dogs. And that is what's happening. So if you can just breathe and realize you can communicate, but if one person has a sheer focus, it's like I have friends that they're extremely focused. That they are not going to the diffuse focus point, all right? And then if I'm going to have a conversation, I need to have my ducks in a row, because all they want to know is the facts, and how can they resolve the facts. They want to be very helpful. They're heartfelt people, but you could have a nervous breakdown if you're in a diffused state. Or it's like every morning I spend 2 hours in a complete and utter Neptunian diffused state because I'm coming from my dreams. I can't move from that realm into this realm immediately because my nerves are shot all day from the shock. So as I began to understand that and accept that as my truth and what I truly needed, I get up at 6. Well, I start to move at 6, but I'm in the realm. I'm in that realm, and I write down the dreams, and I move very, very slowly, because I need to. And if I don't do it, my whole day is off. Or what will happen, in the middle of the afternoon, suddenly I don't know what happened for an hour, and I realized, an hour was stolen because I didn't give it in the morning. So all these realms of communication were so much more complicated and so much more beautiful than we could ever possibly imagine. And the beauty is the complexity. And there are things we know, and there are things that are mysteries, and there are things that we need to stand before and just know, holy moly, I am in the presence of a mystery. Now, speaking of mysteries, one of the greatest mysteries in communication is when you're having a fight with a male, right? And then you suddenly burst in tears. That usually just freaks them out. They just want to either give you what you want or get rid of you or feel manipulated. But what they don't understand, and we don't understand, is that we're talking at, once again, these different levels. Same thing can happen for a man. I mean, he doesn't usually burst out in tears, although he can. He usually bursts out in rage or just disconnects, and you can see him floating away. Because we're not meeting. We could be in different countries, right? So, this is like just really, it's the worst kind of confusion because it's an absence and it's hiding behind a screen. And when a woman unconsciously hands over her spokesman to the level of the masculine focused consciousness, which is what Jung calls the animus, and remains hidden herself in the background, she then allows him, the animus, to pronounce all sorts of collective opinions which are not quite relevant to the situation and are not what she herself thinks or feels. And you can hear it. It's truth. I have it on the highest authority. It's like, oh, really? So you experienced that? No, I read it, or someone told me, or, everyone knows when somebody gets that real opinionated, particularly women. It just, it's like, wow, man, okay. But they're animus possessed. So this is what Jung calls animus possession. But it's not the fault of the animus if what he says is besides the point. Whenever a woman hears this sort of thing inside her own head, she should call for help. The voice is always false. Now this, I think, is fascinating. Tears, spontaneous, genuine tears, without fail, will dispel any form of animus possession. Tears in a woman should be welcomed, not repressed. They wash away all falsity, and they leave her naked, truly herself, and ready to be met. So if they're not manipulative tears, but they're true tears, or they're tears of frustration, we just burst out in tears. That means there's no false animus possession to tell us, oh, I have it on the high. We can't fight at that level because it's not true of our being. So the tears kind of drown the negative animus so that we can be met. Now, when a man gets possessed, unbeknownst to himself, the unconscious feminine, or his anima, has taken over, and it's a state of possession expressed more by moods than words, as the feminine is seldom vocal. The moods may range from caprice to irresponsibility, from sulks to vanity, from sentimentality to sheer bad temper. He has stumbled inadvertently into the sphere, and probably fear, see, the Jungian truth, and the sphere, which he does not at all understand, and wonders why he is so well at ease. So when your beloved, or your boss, or your child, or whatever, is in one of those moods, that they swear they're not in the mood, they are anima possessed. So in my mind, I just go like, ew, they're having lunch with their negative mother within. So, which when the anima is the negative side, she's not the beloved mother, the wise one, Sophia. She's the witch. Step back. He's having lunch with a witch, and there is no room for you. Let it pass. And certainly, don't point it out. He can't see it. So, but on the other hand, when a man enters into the feminine level of diffused awareness, he'll be able to use his natural gifts and formulations to express the wisdom that he finds there. And when the feminine gets that unfocused, she knows it's a call to see something other, to feel. It's not going to come in focused words. It may come in a dance or movement, or it just will be in art, okay? And like a creative artist is a person that, in spite of the pressures of education and the need to adapt to society, based on focused consciousness, succeeds in never losing his contact with the field, or her contact, with the field of diffused awareness, with the unbroken connection of all growing things still reign. This explains the artist's state of continual conflict and his often strange behavior. His art is not the result of a one-sided development, as has often been suggested, but of a greater capacity to live in the whole of his personality, whether his art sees the light of day or not. He has done something immense, something significant, not only for himself, but for society as a whole. That's both in males and females. And I wonder if that's why, creatively we get blocked, because we don't kind of settle into this diffused energy that kind of knows it's all one. In a sense, it's like by the light of day, we don't know that we're in a cosmos. We don't know our lives are being directed by the heavens, the stars, until it's dark. And then suddenly, everything we couldn't see, we can see. So this is part of the listening, both within and without, and the meeting. So if we are uncertain to who we are going to live behind a screen. We are going to wear an outfit so people know who we are. But that's not communication. We need to, for a genuine meeting, the barrier is a failure of communication, that we all know, that we do not say what we really mean, and those who are at the receiving end equally often fail to listen. Communication often fails to take the place because we do not know ourselves well enough to clear what it is we want to say. This is practically true of many social groups. Right? Or we live behind our profession. I am a doctor. I am a clown. I am a housewife. I am a hooker. Whatever. Okay? So when we have the archetype of the healer, which is sustained and nourishes us throughout the centuries and has fallen from the shoulders, leaving them as little clogs. So it's like that healer within, that voice within. We've disconnected. And it's like an echo. Or in the state of when one falls into depression. And I'm not talking about a mood. I'm talking about when it really takes you over. You cannot hear, let alone meet, your soul, your psyche. And the possession will take you over. So when we learn to listen, now what's going to be very interesting, going back to Robin Williams, is now people are going to realize that certain ways. For me personally, when he was doing his comedy, it scared me. My body was like, oh my God, there's like some internal clown, diabolical clown in this man that's sucking his blood. I didn't find it funny. I found it manic. It made me very uncomfortable. And yet when he did his dramatic roles, I swooned at his genius because he was meeting who he really was. I put up on Facebook this sweet YouTube that I found with him and meeting Coco, the gorilla, and it's hilarious. And you see in his face the pure joy of being met. Because Coco can do sign languages, so he's teaching him sign, the gorilla, right? And the gorilla says to Robert Williams through sign language, I want to be tickled, so tickle me. So he tickles the gorilla tickles him, and at the end, you see Robin Williams with his head resting on this great gorilla, and he's in bliss. They met. It's a profound teaching in being met. So that's part, and of what the series about knowing is going to be about how to be met, what's going on when we're not met, what happens in the misunderstanding. One person was in Timbuktu and the other was in the Bronx, So in the not listening, so we're either not present in our bodies or we're not listening. You see, it doesn't matter about the loudness of the sound. It's the relevance. Granny can't hear anything, but drop a teaspoon and suddenly she's all over you, like white on rice, man. It's like, how'd that happen? It's relevance. And it seems that we can only give attention to a topic when we give meaning to it. Otherwise, we turn away or think of something else. Now, it's very interesting in the inability to listen as adults is very often in the course of specialization, like I'm a physician. So physicians usually, although now it's changing tremendously, usually do not want to hear about the language of soul. Not interested. It's medical, it's mathematical, and it can be solved even if you don't know. So as children, very often when we hear the word God, which just for a child very often just brings out like, whoa, what's that sound? What is that about? Something that's different. And many children are capable of hearing overtones in the word God. But at a later age, they don't want to hear it. Don't talk to me about that. I don't want to hear about that. So very often when adults talk about God, they cease to listen. Others continue to hear the overtones of increasing richness in the word God. And the communication between these two groups or these two people then becomes impossible. Isn't that amazing? Because it would be kind of like a trigger. We stop listening because we think we know. We're identified with what we went to school for. So this inner listening, as well as the outer listening, can be learned or ignored, which is fascinating. So something is irrelevant in our culture, or necessary for the preservation of our own individualities, we're going to tune everything else out. But when we have found our true individual road, we have to keep to it. To follow the bypass in outer life gets us nowhere. To follow the call of every voice in the inner world leads to disorientation. So this ability to select is one of man's greatest gifts, but the ability to meet other people is another great quality, and this involves opening those ears which we have been so busily closing in order to select. As we begin to achieve this, we start to lower one of the great barriers to meeting and knowing. So this is very important. We need both skills. Maybe that's why we have two ears. One for the focused listening and one for the diffused. Notice we've got two ears but one mouth, so we've got to put that together. So have an absolutely fabulous week while all of this death phobia stuff is flying all around. think your own thoughts. You know, what you believe. Don't believe somebody else's faith. Have your own and what you believe in. Next week there will be no Riddle Talk. I am going to take a course in sculpting. Yay, the sensei. So just go on the website or go on the Facebook and tell people about Blog Talk Radio Venus Unplugged. If you're going to be talking, talk. Take care. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Progressive presents Mindflowness with Flo.
You are a mighty fortress of supreme knowledge. Progressive Direct has not only revealed their rates, but those of their competitors. If you were any more in the know, you would be drowning in, the know.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates, because knowledge is power. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.